Hello there Envoy and welcome to my ultimate beginner's guide for Avowed. In this video I'll go over everything you need to know in order to survive the Living Lands. I'll have timestamps listed on screen right now so you can easily navigate to the parts of the video you can make the most use of. At the very start of the game you will find yourself by Fort Northreach. This is quite a linear area and also serves as the tutorial section for the player. Due to this, I would recommend taking your time when first going through Fort Northreach, as it's a relatively safe and easy to navigate area where you can try out different weapons, read the tutorial pop-ups, and get a bit of a feel of the game. Once in the Living Lands proper, you'll find that the map as a whole is segmented into different areas. You will start out in Dawnshore and be limited to this region until you progress the main questline. Every time you make it to one of the new regions, you will need to once again advance the main questline in order to unlock the next area in sequence. But this doesn't mean we're dealing with an entirely linear game. These different regions of the Living Lands are still open world, allowing you to travel around them as you wish. If you want to have an easy time of exploring within these regions, then you should keep an eye out for fast travel beacons and party camps. By walking over to a beacon, you will then be able to fast travel to them from anywhere else in the region by selecting it from the map. You can also do this with party camps, which can be unlocked by walking over to these green Aedra crystals you'll see sprouting from the ground. Unlike standard fast travel beacons, the party camp comes with a few added benefits. Not only will you fully heal when travelling to one of these, but when you leave you have the option of returning to the spot you fast travelled from. This makes party camps a great way to heal up after a tough fight, without losing any progress on your journey. In addition, the party camp contains the player stash, crafting stations, and totem stands. It also is a place where you can chat to your companions, getting their insight on current events and allowing you to learn more of their backstory. I'll briefly go over each of the camp stations now, just so you're familiar with what all of them are used for. First up is the party stash. This is where you store items you don't want to lug around in your inventory. The stash has unlimited storage, and you can send items from your inventory to the stash no matter where you are in the world, effectively giving you infinite carry weight to work with. Next up is the workbench. This is where you upgrade weapons and armour, making them substantially stronger. Upgrading uses materials which you will find out on your travels, and these materials are restricted to the different regions of the game. What this means is that you can't just instantly push up every item to top quality, but instead you try and upgrade the equipment you use as you play, in order to keep it up to scratch. The next station is the enchanting station, where you can improve the effects on your unique weapons. You can only upgrade each unique weapon in this way once, and you always have a choice of 2 different effects, so choose wisely which one you'd rather have. The totem stones are next, and these provide spaces for totems. Each region has a 6-piece totem that relates to a specific god, and once you have the base piece, you can start constructing it at your camp. Doing so gives you various benefits, depending on how many pieces you have collected. The final crafting station is the cauldron, which allows you to cook different recipes. Here you can craft up various consumables to aid your character in battle. Most are healing based, though some will provide buffs, and it's even possible to craft grenades here, which is pretty cool. When first creating your character, you will have 10 attribute points to spread across 6 different skills. You can only raise each of these to a maximum of 3 at the start of the game, which does mean you'll be investing points into most of the stats, if not all of them. The game does a good job letting you know what each of these different attributes does, and what kind of builds they'll work best for, but I'll go over each one briefly anyway. Might increases damage and carry capacity. Carry weight really isn't an issue, as you can just send items to your stash, but a flat damage boost is obviously going to be helpful. If all you really care about is making your weapon deal the highest base damage they can, then Might is the skill for you. Constitution determines how tough you are, by boosting maximum health as well as poison and bleed resistance. The second of these are fairly situational, but maximum health is always good to have improved. The more points in this skill, the harder you are to kill, though armour will have more of an impact on your overall survivability. The dexterity skill makes your attacks and abilities faster. Your attacks being faster means you have a higher overall DPS that you dish out. If you want to feel nimble and speedy, then this is a good skill to invest in. Perception is primarily for range builds, as it both increases crit chance and maximum range. Maximum range matters for ranged weapons like guns and bows, allowing you to hit enemies from farther away. Critical hit chance gives you a better chance of landing a critical, which deals more damage than a normal attack, making this skill an indirect one for raising overall damage. The penultimate skill is Intellect, which boosts your maximum essence as well as elemental resistance. If you want to play as a mage, then this is the attribute for you, as essence is what you need to cast spells and abilities. The elemental resistance also helps to make you a little bit tankier. Final attribute is Resolve. This boosts maximum stamina and second wind efficiency. Stamina is used for regular weapon attacks as well as dodging and blocking. As such, this is an attribute well worth the investment, as the more stamina you have, the more you can do in combat. The second wind feature is one that allows you to survive after having your health bar emptied. Rather than dying the first time this happens, you will instead activate your second wind. With more points in Resolve, you can get back up with more of your health, and have a shorter cooldown for when you can use this again. On to the main skill tree section now. By clicking on the Abilities tab, you will see 5 different skill trees. The first 3 are your standard level up trees, which you will gain points to spend in when you increase your character level. For the very first point you invest, you only have a choice of 1 of 3 different skills. You can pick the charge ability from the fighter tree, Tanglefoot from the ranger tree, or the minor missiles ability from the wizard tree. Each of these are activated abilities which require essence to use, and allow you to dash forward, hold an enemy in place, or deal some direct damage. Once you have invested a single point into one of these, all of the level 1 skills will then be available for purchase. The skills at the lower rows unlock once you reach the listed level required. When looking through the various abilities, you will notice that some are round and some are square. The round abilities are passive ones, meaning they are typically always doing what they say in their description. If it is instead a square ability, it is an activated ability, meaning you will need to trigger it yourself in order to use the effect, and this will typically cost you some essence. Each of these 3 skill trees will help to shape your character, not only with the abilities you can use, but also by improving different types of equipment. If you want to use heavy armour and melee weapons, then chances are you want to focus on the fighter tree. If ranged weapons like bows and guns are more your thing, then the ranger skill will be your main focus. And if you want to be a full-on spell slinger, then the wizard tree is your priority. Do keep in mind that you don't need to limit yourself to one tree, and can freely invest points between all 3. The other 2 sections in the abilities tab work a little differently. The first is Godlike. This section gives you various powers and buffs, and are unlocked by either exploring and finding certain points of interest, or by advancing the main story. The one ability in this tree you start out with is Divine Form, providing you with a deadly sneak attack ability. Everything else will require you to progress the game itself to unlock, and I'll leave the exacts for you to find out so that I don't spoil anything. The final section is the Companion skill tree. Each follower you unlock in the Living Lands comes with a trio of activated abilities and 1 passive skill too. As you level up, you will occasionally get an extra point for each one of your followers, in order to make them a little more powerful. When you unlock a new follower, they will also gain all the skill points to make them level with the rest of your followers, as all of them level up with one another. Combat is one of the main features of this RPG, and as you'll regularly find yourself in a fight, there are several different things you'll want to understand in order to have a better chance of winning your battles. The first aspect I want to go over is accumulation. Whenever you or an enemy are hit with a fire, frost, shock, bleed, or poison attack, accumulation will begin to build, and one of these symbols will appear. These spheres fill up from bottom to top, and when fully filled, the target will suffer the effect of the element. For fire, bleed, and poison, this will be damage over time. Shock is damage over time as well, but also builds up stun on the target, and frost freezes the target solid, preventing them from acting and making it possible to shatter them with a strong enough attack. Certain weapons, spells, and effects will allow you to build up this accumulation, making you more dangerous in a fight. I just mentioned how the shock effect can build up stun, so let's talk about that next. When targeting an enemy, you will see a yellow bar underneath their health bar. This builds up with every attack you hit the enemy with, and is the stun meter. When entirely filled up, you can then hit them with a standard attack, in order to dish out a devastating amount of damage. Another way to dish out bonus damage is to land a critical hit. These occur passively and are dependent on your perception attribute, as well as the specific weapon you're wielding. Some weapons have a higher chance of landing a critical hit than others, allowing them to get a decent damage bonus as well as a bit of knockback on the target. In order to hit anyone with an attack, you're going to need to use up stamina. When you start swinging your weapon, you will see this grey meter appear in the middle of the screen. This is your stamina bar. Actions like dodging, blocking, and attacking will use up your stamina, and if you deplete this entirely, then your character will become temporarily unable to act, and slow down drastically for a couple of seconds. Stamina does regenerate over time at a fairly rapid rate, and in order to do your best in a fight, you should make sure to let your stamina bar never fully deplete, and instead try to manage how quickly you're using your stamina, and allow it time to replenish. While most attacks will use up stamina, abilities and spells instead use essence. This bar can be found in the bottom left of the screen, directly below your health bar. Unlike stamina, this does not replenish on its own, and you will instead need to either use consumables like essence potions, or gather purple orbs from defeated enemies in order to build it back up. Essence potions aren't the only consumable you can use to give yourself an edge in a fight. You can also use healing potions to top up your health, and whatever food items you've either picked up on your travels or crafted at the party camp. Food items often give you a certain amount of healing or essence replenishment, and unlike potions, you can consume these before a fight with your health and essence filled, and the replenishment won't begin until you start losing either health or essence. For this reason, food items can be very powerful for keeping you alive. On top of that, some will give you status effect boosts, or even remove accumulation buildup. You don't want to rely entirely on healing items to stay alive though. When getting attacked, rather than just powering through the damage, you ideally want to either dodge or block. Dodging is achieved by pressing the jump button while also moving left, right, or backwards. This allows you to avoid attacks entirely, though it does use up stamina to do so. If you would rather block an attack, then you will need to do so with your weapon. If you're dual wielding or using a ranged weapon, then you typically won't be able to block. But if you have a shield, are wielding a two-handed melee weapon, or a one-handed weapon with your offhand free, then you can block attacks. This prevents enemy attacks from damaging you, though each attack you block will deplete your stamina bar, and stamina doesn't regen the same while blocking, so you can't just hide behind a block forever. Additionally, enemies sometimes perform unblockable attacks, which are typically much heavier and indicated by a red circle. You will instead need to dodge these, as they otherwise punch through your defences. The final thing I want to go over in this section is enemy levels. When targeting an enemy, you will see some symbols to the left of their health bar. This will be a number in Roman numerals, as well as some chevrons and possibly some skulls too. The higher the number and the more chevrons that are filled, the harder the enemy will be to take down. If you see skulls there too, then that means the enemy is much stronger than your equipment is. This rating system is the same as the weapon upgrade system and correlates to it pretty much perfectly. If your weapon is of a higher quality than the enemy, it will deal a lot of damage to them. But if the reverse is true, then you will deal very little damage. We'll get onto upgrading equipment shortly, but the main thing to keep in mind here is that you can tell how tough an enemy will be by checking their overall rating. The higher it is, the tougher the fight will be. The final section for me to go over is equipment. I'll talk about weapons first, and I've split these up into a few different categories. First up are the one-handed melee weapons. These are daggers, swords, spears, axes, and maces. Lighter weapons such as daggers and swords typically deal less damage and lower stun build-up, though they have a cheaper stamina cost for their attacks and tend to attack faster too. Heavier weapons like axes and maces deal more damage and stun, though they have a higher stamina cost to use and swing slower. Additionally, the heavier weapons tend to be better at blocking. You can also dual-wield one-handed weapons if you so wish. We then have two-handed melee weapons, which are split up into great swords, great axes, and great hammers. These follow a similar trend as the one-handed melee weapons, though obviously cannot be dual-wielded. Once again, the heavier the weapon, the slower but stronger it will be. In terms of ranged weapons, we have wands, pistols, bows, and arquebus. Wands are unique among the ranged weapons, as not only can they deal damage at a distance, but they are also able to block attacks. They do have low block efficacy however, meaning they're not particularly good at this. Pistols are the other one-handed ranged weapon, but instead of blocking, they will aim, allowing you to get more accurate shots. For the two-handed ranged weapons, we have the bow and arquebus. Bows are relatively fast and quiet, though they do shoot in an arc. Arquebus are rifles, which deal very high damage and stun, as well as firing perfectly straight, making them accurate at long ranges. However, they are quite slow to reload and very loud, making them poor weapons for stealth. The two weapon types I haven't covered are shields and grimoires. Both of these can only be equipped in the offhand and work differently to other weapons. Shields are used exclusively for blocking, and as expected, it's what they do best. They are more effective at blocking than any melee weapon, allowing you to defend against many attacks. Grimoires are the most interesting of all the weapons, as rather than performing standard attacks, they instead allow you to use various spells from the wizard skill tree. What specific spells depends on both the specific grimoire you are wielding, as well as how many points you have invested into the grimoire mastery ability. Do keep in mind that these spells still use up essence to cast. On to armour now, which is separated into light, medium, and heavy. All armour reduces your maximum stamina and essence, though the lighter it is, the less of a negative impact it has. However, heavier armour is better for reducing damage and stagger. There are two different ways in which armour reduces the damage you take. Damage reduction is a percentage that is taken off the attack, while additional damage reduction is a flat amount the attack is reduced by. The only thing that really matters for this is that the higher you can raise these numbers, the less damage you take. In addition to armour, you also have 2 clothing slots in the form of gloves and boots. These don't provide any armour, instead simply giving you some special effects. These will all be different depending on the individual item, so make sure to take a look at any new clothing items you pick up in order to see what effects they come with. Likewise, you also have 2 slots for rings, as well as a slot for a trinket or amulet. These basically work the exact same as clothing, providing many different unique effects to enhance your character. The very final thing I want to go over briefly are upgrades and enchantments. All weapons and armour can be upgraded at the party camp in order to make them stronger. Upgrading as standard will cost resources, which can be found throughout the different regions in the Living Lands. If you want to push up a new tier of quality however, you will require Aedra, which is much more limited, making it hard to upgrade several items all at once. As such, it's well worth figuring out what equipment you get on with before you start upgrading, and only using Aedra on equipment you're confident you will stick with for a while. As you progress through the game and loot new equipment, you will find that most of it comes partially upgraded already, typically at a similar level to what you have equipped. Enchantments are specific to unique weapons, and are the special effects they come with. At the enchanting station at the party camp, you can upgrade the main effect that each unique weapon comes with, and have 2 choices for how to upgrade it. You can only select one of these, and cannot reverse the process, so take some time to ponder which upgrade is better for your build. And hopefully that is everything you could possibly need to know in order to get through Avowed. If there is anything else you need to learn, you can always check the journal tab in-game, which has tutorials for just about everything. Additionally, if you have anything you think new players should know, feel free to leave it in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up if you found it helpful, and, as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.